The chapel's rotting roof let in moonlight and the November wind, and when Elara Novak opened her eyes, she saw her daughter shivering beside her on the stone floor, wrapped in a coat too thin for the cold that bit through everything. Elara sat up slowly, joints aching, and pulled Mia closer. The girl was 5 years old and sleeping fitfully, her dark curls matted against her pale forehead. They had been walking for 3 days, hitchhiking when they could, sleeping rough when they couldn't, running from a man whose fists had taught Elara that love was supposed to hurt. She had believed him for 6 years. Then he had raised his hand to Mia, and something inside Elara had finally broken open. She had taken nothing but their coats and what cash she could scrape together. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. The chapel was somewhere in the mountains outside Prague, crumbling and forgotten, its pews long since rotted to splinters. Elara had found it just before dark, and it had seemed like a miracle. Now, with the temperature dropping and her daughter's lips turning blue, it seemed like just another mistake in a long line of mistakes. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered, though Mia couldn't hear her. "I'm so sorry." She didn't know what she was apologizing for marrying a monster, for staying too long, for running without a plan, for being 24 years old and having nothing to show for it but bruises and a child who deserved so much better. The wind picked up, howling through the broken windows, and Elara lay back down, wrapping herself around Mia like a shield against the cold. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about tomorrow, or the day after that, or how they would survive the winter with nowhere to go. She didn't hear the footsteps. When she opened her eyes again, someone was standing over them. Elara's breath caught. She pulled Mia tighter, instinct overriding exhaustion, her body already bracing for violence. The figure was tall, impossibly tall, draped in a long black coat that seemed to drink the moonlight. His hair was white, stark against the darkness, falling past his shoulders. His skin was pale as bone, and his eyes were red, not reflecting the light, not a trick of the shadows. Red, like rubies, like blood, like nothing human. Elara opened her mouth to scream, but the sound died in her throat. The man raised one hand, a gesture that was somehow both commanding and gentle, and she found herself frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. "Be still," he said. His voice was low and precise, accented in a way Elara couldn't place. Old, it sounded old. "I will not harm you." Elara didn't believe him. Men always said things like that right before they hurt you. But he didn't move closer. He simply stood there, studying them with an expression that was impossible to read. His face was beautiful in a way that made her chest hurt, all sharp angles and aristocratic lines, ageless and remote. "This place is not safe," he said after a moment. "You will freeze before dawn." Elara found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Who are you?" The man tilted his head slightly, considering her. "My name is Jareth Nocturne. I am the king of these mountains and everything in them, including this chapel." King. The word should have sounded ridiculous, but coming from him it didn't. It sounded like simple fact. "We'll leave," Elara said quickly. "We didn't know. We'll go." "Where?" Jareth asked. His tone wasn't mocking. It was genuinely curious, as if he couldn't imagine where 2 half-frozen humans might go at midnight in the wilderness. Elara had no answer. Jareth looked down at Mia, who was still sleeping, her small body trembling despite Elara's warmth. Something shifted in his expression, too quick to name. "You are running from something," he said. It wasn't a question. Elara didn't answer. She didn't owe this stranger anything, not even the truth. Jareth studied her for a long moment, and Elara had the unsettling sense that he could see through her, past the fear and exhaustion, down to the bruises she had hidden beneath her clothes. "I see," he said quietly. Then, before Elara could react, he knelt down beside them. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, radiating a kind of cold power that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. He reached for Mia, and Elara's hands tightened reflexively. "Don't," she said. "Please don't." Jareth paused, his red eyes meeting hers. I am taking you somewhere warm. You may come willingly, or I may compel you. But you will not spend another hour in this ruin." "Why?" Elara demanded. "Why do you care?" Jareth didn't answer immediately. He looked at Mia again and then back at Elara, and when he spoke, his voice was softer than before. "Because no one should have to sleep in a place like this, least of all a child." There was something in his tone that made Elara believe him, something that sounded almost like memory, like old pain. "Where?" she asked. "My home." "And then what? What do you want from us?" Jareth stood, scooping Mia up with a gentleness that seemed at odds with everything about him. The girl stirred but didn't wake, her head lolling against his shoulder. He looked down at Elara, still kneeling on the cold stone. "Nothing," he said. "I want nothing from you. You are cold and afraid and alone, and I have more rooms than I could ever use. That is all." Elara didn't understand. People didn't help for no reason. There was always a reason, always a price. But Mia was so small in his arms, and the wind was so cold, and Elara was so tired of being strong. "Okay," she whispered. Jareth nodded once, then turned and started walking toward the chapel doors. Elara scrambled to her feet and followed, her legs unsteady, her mind spinning. Outside, the night was clear and freezing, the stars hard points of light overhead. Jareth walked with the kind of effortless grace that came from absolute confidence, Mia cradled against his chest like something precious. Elara hurried to keep up, her breath fogging in the air. They walked for what felt like miles, though it couldn't have been that far. The trees pressed close on either side, ancient and silent, and Elara had the eerie sense that they were being watched. But nothing emerged from the shadows, and Jareth never slowed. Finally, the forest opened up, and Elara stopped dead. The house before them was not a house. It was a manor, sprawling and gothic, all dark stone and tall windows, impossibly grand and impossibly out of place in the middle of nowhere. Light glowed behind the windows, warm and golden, and Elara could see the shapes of people moving inside. No, not people. Vampires. The word appeared in her mind fully formed, and she knew with absolute certainty that it was true. The white hair, the red eyes, the pale skin, the way Jareth moved like gravity didn't quite apply to him. He was a vampire, and he was taking them into a house full of vampires. Elara's legs locked. "I can't." Jareth stopped and turned to face her. He didn't look surprised. "You are afraid." "Of course I'm afraid," Elara said. Her voice was shaking. "You're a vampire. You're all vampires." "Yes." "You drink blood." "Yes." "And you want me to just walk in there with my daughter?" Jareth's expression didn't change. "I gave you my word that I would not harm you. I do not give my word lightly." "You're a monster." Something flickered in his eyes, too fast to read. "Perhaps. But I am a monster who is offering you shelter from the cold. If you would prefer the chapel, I will not stop you." He said it calmly, without anger, but Elara heard the challenge underneath. He was giving her a choice. A real choice, not the illusion of one. She looked at Mia, still sleeping peacefully in Jareth's arms, and thought about the chapel and the cold and the long road that had brought them here. She thought about going back, or going forward, or trying to survive another night with nothing. "If you hurt her," Elara said quietly, "I will find a way to kill you. I don't care what you are." Jareth's lips curved, just slightly, into something that might have been a smile. Noted. Then he turned and walked toward the manor, and after a moment, Elara followed. Inside, the house was as overwhelming as its exterior. The entrance hall was vast, floored in black marble, lit by chandeliers that looked like they belonged in a palace. A grand staircase swept upward, and doorways branched off in every direction. Everything was elegant and old and immaculate, and Elara felt suddenly, painfully aware of her own state. Her clothes were dirty and torn, her hair tangled, her face probably bruised. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had been running for days with nowhere to go. A figure appeared at the top of the stairs. Another vampire, this one female, with white hair that fell in a sleek curtain to her waist and eyes like garnets. She wore a black gown that looked like it cost more than Elara had earned in her entire life. "My lord," she said, descending the stairs with liquid grace. "We did not expect you back so soon." "Circumstances changed, Seraphine," Jareth said. He shifted Mia carefully in his arms. "Prepare the east wing, 2 rooms adjacent. They will need food, clothing, and medical supplies." Seraphine's eyes flicked to Elara, then to Mia, and something unreadable passed across her face. "Of course. Should I summon Lysander?" "Yes, discreetly." Seraphine nodded and disappeared down a side hallway, moving so quickly she seemed to blur. Jareth started up the stairs, and Elara followed numbly, too overwhelmed to do anything else. They walked through hallways that seemed to stretch forever, past rooms filled with shadows and antique furniture, until finally Jareth stopped in front of a set of double doors and pushed them open. The room beyond was enormous, dominated by a 4-poster bed draped in dark blue silk. A fire was already burning in the fireplace, filling the space with warmth and light. There was a sitting area, a wardrobe, a door that presumably led to a bathroom. It was the most beautiful room Elara had ever seen. Jareth crossed to the bed and laid Mia down gently, arranging her on top of the covers. The girl sighed and curled into a ball but didn't wake. He straightened and turned to Elara. "The door beside this one leads to your room," he said. "It connects to this one through the bathroom. You may lock the doors if it makes you feel safer." Elara stared at him. "Why are you doing this? I told you, no one should have to sleep in a ruin." "That's not a reason." Jareth regarded her for a long moment. "Do you believe in fate, Elara Novak?" Elara flinched. She hadn't told him her name. Jareth noticed, of course. "Your identification was in your coat pocket. I did not read your thoughts, if that is what concerns you." "Can you do that? Read thoughts?" "Not yours. Humans are different, more closed." Elara didn't know if that was reassuring or not. "You did not answer my question," Jareth said. "No," Elara said. "I don't believe in fate. I think life is just a series of random, terrible things that happen to you until you die." Jareth's expression softened, just barely. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you simply have not yet found the part of the story where things improve." Before Elara could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Jareth opened it to reveal another vampire, this one male, with white hair cut short and eyes like dark rubies. He carried a leather bag that looked like a doctor's kit. "Lysander," Jareth said. "Thank you for coming." Lysander stepped inside, glancing at Mia on the bed, then at Elara. His gaze was clinical, assessing. "The child?" "Exposure, exhaustion, possibly malnourishment. Be gentle." "I am always gentle, my lord." Jareth turned to Elara. "Lysander is a physician. He will examine your daughter to ensure she is well. You may remain here, or you may go to your own room. Seraphine will bring food shortly." Elara wanted to stay, but something about the way Jareth said it made it clear it wasn't a suggestion, and truthfully, she wasn't sure she could stand upright much longer. "Okay," she said. "But if anything happens to her, you will find a way to kill me." "Yes, I remember." Elara met his eyes, searching for mockery but found none. He was taking her seriously, she realized, treating her threats as if they mattered, even though he could probably snap her neck without effort. It was the strangest thing anyone had ever done for her. She nodded once and walked through the connecting door into the next room. It was nearly identical to Mia's, just as grand, just as warm. Elara sank down onto the edge of the bed and put her face in her hands. She had no idea what was happening, no idea where she was or what Jareth really wanted, or if they would even survive the night. But for the first time in days, she wasn't cold. For the first time in years, someone had looked at her like she mattered. It was terrifying. A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. Seraphine entered, carrying a tray laden with bread, cheese, fruit, and a pot of tea. She set it down on the table by the fireplace. "Eat," she said. Her voice was cool, but not unkind. "You look half dead." "Thanks," Elara said dryly. Seraphine's lips twitched. Lord Jareth said you are to be treated as an honored guest. That means no one will touch you, harm you, or even speak to you without your permission. His word is law here. Why? Because he is king. No, I mean, why is he helping us? Seraphine regarded her with those unreadable garnet eyes. I do not know. Lord Jareth does not explain himself, but I have served him for 200 years, and I have never known him to act without reason. 200 years. The words hung in the air like a weight. How old is he? Elara asked. Old enough that I do not ask. Seraphine moved toward the door, then paused. He lost someone once, a very long time ago, a child. I do not know the details, but I know it changed him. Perhaps that is why. Before Elara could ask anything else, Seraphine was gone. Elara stared at the closed door, then at the food, then at the fire. She felt like she had stepped into a dream, or a nightmare, or some strange place in between. She forced herself to eat because she needed the strength. The food was good, better than anything she'd had in days, and the tea was hot and sweet. By the time she finished, her eyelids were drooping. She went to check on Mia. The connecting door was unlocked, and when she pushed it open, she found Lysander packing up his bag. Mia was still asleep, but she looked better somehow, more peaceful. Jareth stood by the window, his back to the room, silhouetted against the night. She will be fine, Lysander said, noticing Elara. She is exhausted and underfed, but there is no serious damage. Rest and proper meals will restore her. Elara felt something in her chest unclench. Thank you. Lysander nodded and left without another word. Elara crossed to the bed and brushed Mia's hair back from her forehead. The girl's breathing was steady and deep. Elara bent and kissed her cheek. You should rest as well, Jareth said without turning around. I will. I just wanted to check on her. She is safe here. You keep saying that. Because it is true. Elara looked at his back, at the way he stood so still, like a statue. Seraphine said you lost a child once. Jareth went very still. For a moment, Elara thought he wouldn't answer. I did, he said finally. A long time ago, in a different life. I'm sorry. So am I. There was a weight to his words that made Elara's throat tighten. She wanted to ask more, but she didn't have the right. She barely knew him. Thank you, she said instead, for bringing us here, for helping us. Jareth turned then, and his red eyes found hers in the firelight. You do not need to thank me. You need to sleep. It wasn't a command quite, but it was close. Elara nodded and went back to her room, closing the connecting door behind her. She lay down on the bed, still fully dressed, and stared at the ceiling. She should have been afraid. She should have been planning her escape, but all she felt was exhaustion and a strange, fragile sense of safety. When she finally closed her eyes, she dreamed of white hair and red eyes and a voice that promised she didn't have to be afraid anymore. She woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the sound of Mia's laughter. Elara bolted upright, momentarily disoriented, then remembered where she was. She stumbled out of bed and through the connecting door into Mia's room. Mia was sitting up in bed, eating what looked like pancakes, while Seraphine sat in a chair nearby, looking vaguely bemused. Mama, Mia said brightly, there's pancakes and syrup, and the nice lady said I could have as much as I want. Elara felt tears prick her eyes. Mia looked better than she had in weeks, her cheeks flushed with color, her eyes bright. That's wonderful, baby, Elara said, crossing to the bed and pulling Mia into a hug. Where are we? Mia asked. This house is really, really big. Elara glanced at Seraphine, who raised one elegant eyebrow. We're staying with some friends for a little while, Elara said carefully. Are they nice? I think so. Yes. Mia nodded, satisfied, and went back to her pancakes. Seraphine stood. Lord Jareth has requested your presence in the library when you are ready, she said. I will show you the way. Elara's stomach tightened. Now? When you are ready, Seraphine repeated. There is no hurry. Take your time. She left, moving with that same unnerving grace, and Elara sat down on the edge of the bed. "Is this a castle, Mama?" Mia asked through a mouthful of pancakes. "Something like that." "Do they have a princess?" "I don't know, baby." "Maybe." Mia grinned, delighted by the possibility, and Elara felt her heart break a little. Her daughter deserved this, deserved safety and warmth and pancakes without worrying where the next meal would come from. She deserved a life that didn't involve sleeping in ruined chapels. Elara waited until Mia had finished eating, then helped her wash up in the bathroom, which was as grand as the rest of the manor, all dark tile and gold fixtures. There were clothes waiting for them in the wardrobe, simple but well made, in sizes that fit perfectly. Elara tried not to think about how Jareth had known their sizes. When they were both dressed, Elara took Mia's hand and opened the door. Seraphine was waiting in the hallway, as if she had known the exact moment they would emerge. "Follow me," she said. They walked through the manor, and in daylight it was somehow even more impressive. The walls were hung with tapestries and paintings that looked centuries old. The floors gleamed. Everything was perfectly maintained, perfectly elegant, and Elara felt like an intruder in her borrowed clothes. Seraphine led them to a set of tall doors and pushed them open. The library beyond was vast, lined floor to ceiling with books, filled with the smell of old paper and leather. Jareth stood by the window, backlit by the late morning sun. No, not the sun. Elara looked closer and realized the windows were covered with some kind of film filtering the light. Of course, vampires couldn't tolerate sunlight. Jareth turned as they entered, and Elara was struck again by how impossibly beautiful he was. In daylight, or what passed for it here, his features were even more striking, his eyes even more unsettling. "Good morning," he said. "I trust you slept well." "Yes," Elara said. "Thank you." Jareth's gaze dropped to Mia, who was staring at him with wide eyes. "Are you a prince?" Mia asked. "Something like that," Jareth said, echoing Elara's words from earlier. "You're really tall." "I am. And your hair is pretty." Jareth blinked, and for a moment he looked genuinely taken aback. Then his expression softened into something that might have been amusement. "Thank you," he said gravely. Mia nodded, satisfied, and went to investigate the nearest bookshelf. Jareth gestured for Elara to sit, and she did, perching on the edge of a leather armchair. He remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back. "I imagine you have questions," he said. "A few thousand," Elara admitted. "Then ask." Elara took a breath. "What do you want from us?" "Nothing. People don't help for no reason. I am not people." "Fine. Vampires don't help for no reason." Jareth's lips curved slightly. "You would be surprised. But very well. If you need a reason, consider it a matter of honor. You were in distress, on my land, under my protection by virtue of proximity. I could not in good conscience leave you there. That's it? Honor? Is that so hard to believe?" Elara thought about her ex, about all the men she had known who talked about honor and respect, and then used their fists. "Yes." Jareth regarded her steadily. "I understand that trust is difficult for you. I am not asking for it. I am simply offering you a place to stay until you are ready to leave. And if I want to leave now, then you may. I will not stop you, though I would recommend waiting until you have a destination in mind." Elara looked down at her hands. He was right, of course. She had nowhere to go. No money, no plan, no safe place to land. Running away had been an act of desperation, not strategy. "How long can we stay?" she asked quietly. "As long as you need." "That's not an answer. It is the only one I have. You are not a burden, Elara. You are a guest." Elara wanted to argue, but she was too tired, too overwhelmed, and some small, treacherous part of her wanted to believe him. "Okay," she said. "We'll stay, for now. But I want to help. I'm not a charity case." "Very well. What are your skills?" Elara almost laughed. Skills. What skills did a woman who'd spent the last 6 years as a punching bag have? I can clean, she said. Cook. I'm good with numbers. I used to work in an office before. Before Mia's father had decided she shouldn't work anymore. Before he'd decided she shouldn't do anything but stay home and wait for him. Then you will assist the household staff, Jareth said. Seraphine can assign you tasks. You will be compensated. You don't have to pay me. Nevertheless, I will. Elara didn't know what to say to that. She glanced over at Mia, who had pulled a book down and was flipping through it, humming to herself. What about her? Elara asked. She needs to be in school, needs structure, needs... There is a village nearby, Jareth said. The school there is small but well run. I can arrange for her to attend. She's been through a lot. She might have trouble adjusting. Then we will help her adjust. We. The word hung in the air between them, strange and warm. Why are you being so kind? Elara whispered. Jareth was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and careful. I have lived for a very long time. I have done many things, some of which I am proud of, many of which I am not. I have watched empires rise and fall, seen beauty and cruelty beyond measure. And I have learned that kindness is not weakness, it is a choice. One I do not make often enough. Elara looked up at him, at the ancient weight in those red eyes, and felt something shift in her chest. Thank you, she said, for choosing it this time. Jareth inclined his head, a gesture that was somehow both regal and humble. You are welcome. Over the following weeks, Elara and Mia settled into a routine that felt almost like normalcy. Mia started attending the village school, driven there each morning by one of Jareth's human staff members and picked up each afternoon. She thrived, making friends quickly, her natural brightness reasserting itself now that she was safe and fed and warm. Elara worked alongside the household staff, learning the rhythms of the manor. It was strange at first, living in a house full of vampires, but they were unfailingly polite and distant, treating her with a respect she wasn't used to. Seraphine became something like a friend, teaching Elara the intricacies of managing a household this size, showing her which rooms were off limits and which were merely unused. And Jareth was everywhere and nowhere. Elara would catch glimpses of him in the hallways, always dressed in dark, impeccably tailored clothes, always moving with that predatory grace. He would ask after Mia, inquire whether Elara had everything she needed, and then disappear again into his study or the parts of the manor where she didn't go. But sometimes, in the evenings, he would join them in the library. He never intruded, simply took a seat by the fire and read while Elara helped Mia with her homework or read her stories. His presence was strangely comforting, a silent reassurance that they were safe. One night, after Mia had gone to bed, Elara found herself alone in the library with Jareth. He was reading something in a language she didn't recognize, his expression intent. Can I ask you something? Elara said. Jareth looked up. Of course. Why do you live all the way out here? I mean, you're a king, right? Shouldn't you have a palace or something? Jareth set his book aside. I have many residences. This is simply the one I prefer. It is quiet, removed from the politics of the court. You don't like politics? I have been playing political games for longer than your country has existed. They grow tiresome. Elara tried to wrap her mind around that. How old are you? Old enough that I stopped counting centuries ago. That must be lonely. Jareth's expression shifted, something vulnerable flashing across his face before he could hide it. It is. But loneliness is the price of immortality. You learn to bear it. Elara thought about her own loneliness, the years she'd spent isolated and afraid, and wondered if immortality made it better or worse. Do you ever wish you were human? She asked. Sometimes, but wishing changes nothing. No, Elara agreed. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them, and Elara realized she felt comfortable here with this ancient, dangerous creature who had saved her and asked for nothing in return. Can I ask you something now? Jareth said. Elara tensed. Okay. The man you were running from, does he know where you are? I don't think so. I was careful. I didn't tell anyone where I was going because I didn't know myself. But you are still afraid he will find you. It wasn't a question. Elara nodded, her throat tight. He won't, Jareth said. His voice was soft but absolutely certain. I will not allow it. You can't promise that. I can, and I do. He leaned forward, his red eyes intense in the firelight. You are under my protection, Elara. Both of you. No one will touch you while you are here. Do you understand? Elara wanted to argue, to point out that he couldn't watch them every second, that her ex was cunning and cruel and relentless. But something in Jareth's expression stopped her. He wasn't making an empty promise. He was stating a fact. Okay, she whispered. I believe you. Jareth held her gaze a moment longer, then sat back. Good. Elara should have gone to bed then, but she didn't want to leave. The library felt safe, and Jareth's presence was oddly soothing, and she was so tired of being alone. Tell me about the child you lost, she said before she could stop herself. Jareth went very still. For a moment, Elara thought he would refuse, or get angry, or simply leave. But then he sighed, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of ages. Her name was Isolde, he said quietly. She was not mine by blood, but I loved her as if she were. Her mother was human, a woman I cared for deeply. When the mother died, I took Isolde in, raised her as my own. She was bright and kind and full of life, and I thought I could protect her from the darkness of my world. He paused, his jaw tight. I was wrong. There were those in the vampire court who saw her as a weakness, a vulnerability to exploit. They took her from me, killed her. I avenged her, destroyed everyone involved, but it did not bring her back. It never does. Elara felt tears sting her eyes. I'm so sorry. It was a very long time ago, but some wounds do not heal, no matter how many years pass. Is that why you helped us? Because we reminded you of her? Jareth looked at her, and in his eyes Elara saw centuries of pain and regret and loss. Perhaps, or perhaps I simply did not want to see history repeat itself. Elara reached out without thinking and touched his hand. It was cold, far colder than any living thing should be, but solid and real. Jareth stared at the point of contact as if he'd never been touched before. Thank you, Elara said, for telling me. Jareth turned his hand over, his fingers curling gently around hers. Thank you for asking. They sat like that for a long time, hands clasped, the fire burning low between them. And Elara realized, with a jolt that was equal parts terrifying and exhilarating, that she was falling for him. It was absurd. He was a vampire, centuries old, impossibly powerful and distant. She was a human, broken and scared, with a 5-year-old daughter and a past she couldn't escape. There was no world in which this made sense, but her heart didn't care about sense. It only cared that he had saved them, protected them, treated them with a gentleness she hadn't known existed. That he looked at her like she mattered, like she was something more than a punching bag or a burden. She pulled her hand back, suddenly self-conscious, and stood. I should go to bed, it's late. Jareth rose as well, all fluid grace. Of course. Sleep well, Elara. You too, she said, then immediately felt stupid. Did vampires even sleep? But Jareth just smiled, a small, genuine expression that transformed his face, and Elara felt her heart skip. She fled before she could do anything else foolish. Over the next few weeks, things between them shifted. It was subtle at first, little changes that Elara almost didn't notice. The way Jareth's eyes would linger on her when he thought she wasn't looking. The way he would find excuses to be in the same room. The way he started joining them for dinner, listening to Mia's chatter about school with an attentiveness that made Elara's chest ache. Mia adored him. She had taken to calling him Mr. Jareth, and would regale him with stories about her day, showing him drawings she'd made in class, asking him questions about the manor and its history. Jareth answered every question with patience and something that looked almost like fondness, and Elara fell a little more each time. It was dangerous. She knew it was dangerous, but she couldn't seem to stop. One evening, Mia fell asleep in the library, curled up on the couch with a book still clutched in her hands. Elara moved to wake her, but Jareth shook his head. "Let her rest. I will carry her to bed." He scooped Mia up with the same gentleness he'd shown that first night in the chapel, and Elara followed him through the corridors to Mia's room. He laid her down carefully, tucking the blankets around her, and Elara watched from the doorway, her throat tight. "You're good with her," she said when they were back in the hallway. "I have had practice. Still, thank you for being kind to her. She makes it easy. She is a remarkable child." "She is," Elara agreed. "She's been through so much, but she's still so bright, so hopeful. I don't know how she does it." "She learned it from you." Elara laughed, a bitter sound. "I'm not hopeful. I'm just trying to survive. That is its own form of hope." Elara looked up at him, at the way the candlelight played across his pale features, and felt something inside her crack open. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always. Why do you spend so much time with us? You must have better things to do." Jareth was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and careful. "I find that I do not. The obligations of kingship are many, but they are also tedious. And I have been alone for a very long time. Your company is refreshing." "Refreshing. That's one word for it. What word would you use?" Elara didn't know how to answer that. She didn't have the words to describe what it felt like to be around him, the strange mix of safety and danger, comfort and exhilaration. "I don't know," she admitted. Jareth stepped closer, and Elara's breath caught. He was so close she could feel the cold radiating from his skin, could see the way his eyes darkened. "Elara," he said, and her name on his lips was almost unbearably intimate. "I must tell you something." "Okay." "I have been alone for centuries. I have watched the world change, seen kingdoms rise and fall, lived through wars and plagues and revolutions. I have known love and loss and everything in between, and in all that time, I have never felt what I feel when I am with you." Elara's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "What do you feel?" "Alive," he said simply. "I feel alive." Elara wanted to say something, anything, but the words wouldn't come. She just stared at him, overwhelmed and terrified and hopeful all at once. "I know this is impossible," Jareth continued. "I know I am not what you need, that I am a creature of darkness and death, and you deserve so much more. But I cannot help the way I feel, and I needed you to know." "Jareth," Elara whispered. He shook his head. "You do not need to say anything. I do not expect anything from you. I simply wanted you to know the truth." Before Elara could respond, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the corridor. Elara stood there for a long time, her mind spinning, her heart racing. She should have been afraid. She should have been running in the opposite direction. But all she wanted was to follow him. She found him in the library, standing by the window, staring out at the night. He didn't turn when she entered, but she knew he heard her. "Jareth," she said. "Elara, you should be sleeping." "I can't, not after what you just said." "Then I apologize for disturbing your rest." "You didn't." Elara crossed to him, her heart in her throat. "You just surprised me." "I have made you uncomfortable. That was not my intention." "You didn't do that either." Elara took a breath. "I feel it too." Jareth turned then, his eyes wide, and Elara saw the vulnerability there, the hope and fear mingled together. "You do?" "Yes. I don't understand it, and I don't know what it means, but I feel it. When I'm with you, I feel safe. I feel seen. I feel like maybe, for the first time in my life, I matter." Jareth reached out and cupped her face with one cold hand, his touch impossibly gentle. "You matter more than you know." Elara leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. "What are we doing?" "I do not know, but I would very much like to find out." Elara opened her eyes and found him watching her with an intensity that made her shiver. This is insane. You're a vampire, I'm human. You're immortal and I'm not. This can't work. Perhaps not. But does that mean we should not try? Elara thought about all the reasons this was a terrible idea, about the impossibility of a relationship between a human and a vampire, about Mia and the life they were trying to build, and the danger of getting too close to someone like Jareth. And then she thought about how he had saved them, protected them, treated them with a kindness and respect she had never known, about how he looked at her like she was something precious, about how, for the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. No, she said, it doesn't. Jareth smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing Elara had ever seen. Then he leaned down and kissed her, his lips cold but soft, and Elara felt the world tilt. It was nothing like kissing a human. There was no warmth, no pulse, just the strange, overwhelming presence of something ancient and powerful and impossibly gentle. Elara's hands came up to clutch his shoulders, and Jareth pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her like a shield. When they finally broke apart, Elara was breathless and shaking. Wow, she whispered. Jareth's lips curved. Indeed. What now? Now we take this slowly, one step at a time. I will not rush you, Elara. You have been hurt enough. I will not add to that. Elara felt tears prick her eyes. You really are unlike anyone I've ever met. I will take that as a compliment. You should. They stood there for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, and Elara felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next few months passed in a blur of quiet domesticity and growing intimacy. Jareth courted her in the old-fashioned sense of the word, bringing her flowers from the manor's gardens, reading to her in the library, walking with her through the grounds in the evening when the sun had set and it was safe for him to venture outside. He was endlessly patient, never pushing, always waiting for her to set the pace. It was so different from her past relationship that Elara sometimes had to remind herself it was real. Mia, for her part, seemed delighted by the development. She had picked up on the change between them immediately, in the way children always did, and had started referring to Jareth as Mama's friend, with a conspiratorial grin that made Elara laugh, but the peace couldn't last forever. It was a cold evening in late January when everything changed. Elara was in the kitchen helping prepare dinner when Seraphine appeared in the doorway, her expression grim. Elara, come with me. Now. Elara's stomach dropped. What's wrong? There is a man at the gate. He claims to be Mia's father. He's demanding to see you. The world tilted. Elara grabbed the counter to steady herself, her breath coming in short gasps. How? She whispered. How did he find us? I do not know. But Lord Jareth is handling it. Elara didn't think. She just ran. She found them at the front gate, visible through the windows of the entrance hall. Jareth stood on the inside, tall and imposing, his posture radiating controlled fury. On the other side of the wrought iron gate was a man Elara knew too well, Marcus, Mia's father, the man who had spent 6 years teaching Elara what fear felt like. He looked the same as he always had, all charming smiles and easy confidence, but Elara could see the rage underneath, the barely controlled violence that she knew intimately. Elara! He called when he saw her. Baby, come on, let's talk about this. Elara stopped behind Jareth, her hands shaking. How did you find me? You really think you could run from me? I've been tracking you since you left. Took a while, but I knew I'd find you eventually. Now come on, bring Mia. We're going home. No. Marcus's expression darkened. What did you say? I said no, we're not going anywhere with you. Elara, don't be stupid. You're my wife. Mia's my daughter. You can't just take off like that. Ex-wife, Elara said, her voice shaking but firm. The divorce papers were filed weeks ago, and Mia is staying with me. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. You think you can just leave me? After everything I've done for you? I gave you a home, a life, and this is how you repay me? You beat me, Elara said, and the words felt like a release. You hurt me for years, and then you tried to hurt Mia. I'm not going back to that. Ever. Marcus took a step forward, his face twisting with rage. You're mine, Elara. You don't get to decide when this ends. She has already decided, Jareth said, his voice cold and absolute. And you will not take another step forward. Marcus's eyes flicked to Jareth, really seeing him for the first time. Elara watched as confusion crossed his face, then fear as he took in the white hair, the red eyes, the inhuman stillness. What the hell are you? Marcus demanded. I am the reason you will leave this place and never return, Jareth said. Elara and her daughter are under my protection. If you attempt to take them, or harm them, or even speak to them again, I will ensure you regret it for the brief remainder of your life. Marcus laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You threatening me? I don't know what you are, freak, but I'm not scared of you. Jareth moved. One moment he was standing beside Elara. The next he was at the gate, his hand reaching through the bars to grab Marcus by the throat. Marcus's laughter cut off with a choked gasp. You should be, Jareth said softly. I have lived for over 1,000 years. I have killed kings and conquerors and creatures far more dangerous than you, and I am telling you now, with absolute certainty, that if you do not leave immediately, you will not leave at all. His eyes flared, glowing bright red in the darkness, and Marcus made a strangled sound of terror. Jareth released him, and Marcus stumbled backward, clutching his throat. Go, Jareth said, and do not return. Marcus looked at Elara one last time, and she saw the fear in his eyes, the realization that he had lost. Then he turned and ran, disappearing into the night. Elara's legs gave out. She would have collapsed if Jareth hadn't been there in an instant, catching her, holding her up. It's over, he murmured. He will not come back. How do you know? Because I will ensure it. I have people who can make certain he stays far away from you. He will not be a threat again. Elara buried her face in Jareth's chest and sobbed, months of fear and tension finally breaking. Jareth held her, one hand stroking her hair, murmuring soothing words in a language she didn't understand. When she finally pulled back, her face was wet with tears, but her chest felt lighter than it had in years. Thank you, she whispered. You do not need to thank me. I will always protect you. Elara believed him. That night, after Mia was asleep, Elara went to Jareth's study. He was sitting by the fire, a glass of something dark in his hand, staring into the flames. Is that blood? Elara asked. Jareth glanced at the glass. Yes, I apologize if it disturbs you. It doesn't. I just realized I've never seen you drink before. I am discreet. It is not something humans generally wish to witness. Elara sat down across from him. Can I ask what it's like, being a vampire? Jareth considered. It is both more and less than you might imagine. The strength, the speed, the immortality, those are real. But so is the isolation, the constant hunger, the knowledge that you will watch everyone you care about age and die while you remain unchanged. Do you regret it? Sometimes. But I have also seen wonders that no human will ever witness. I have walked through history, seen empires rise and fall, known people and places that exist now only in memory. There is a beauty in that, even if it is lonely. You don't have to be lonely anymore, Elara said softly. Jareth looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her breath catch. Elara, you must understand what you are saying. If you stay with me, if we pursue this, you will still age. You will still die. I will have to watch you grow old and leave me, and I do not know if I can bear that again. So don't watch me die. Turn me. The words hung in the air between them, shocking in their simplicity. Jareth set his glass down with a sharp clink. Elara, no. You do not know what you are asking. Yes, I do. You just told me. Immortality, strength, a life with you. And isolation and hunger and watching everyone you know die. It is not a gift, Elara. It is a curse. Then why do you keep living? Jareth flinched as if she'd struck him. Because I do not have a choice. but I do. And I'm choosing you. You have a daughter. She needs her mother, a human mother. Mia will grow up. She'll have her own life. And I'll still be there for her. Just different. Jareth stood, pacing to the window. I will not do this. I will not damn you to this existence. Elara rose and crossed to him, placing a hand on his arm. Jareth, look at me. He did, reluctantly. I've spent my entire adult life being told what I can and can't do, what I should want, what's best for me, and I'm done with that. I'm making my own choices now, and I choose this. I choose you. Elara. I love you, she said, and the words came out strong and sure. I love you, and I want to be with you, for as long as possible. If that means becoming a vampire, then that's what I'll do. Jareth stared at her, and she saw the war playing out behind his eyes. Fear and hope and longing all tangled together. I love you too, he said finally, more than I thought I could love anything. And that is why I cannot make this decision for you. It must be yours, fully and completely yours. I understand, and I'm telling you, this is what I want. Then I will ask you again in a year. If you still feel the same way, if you are still certain, then I will do it, but not before. You need time to understand what you are asking. Elara wanted to argue, but she saw the resolve in his expression and knew it would be pointless. Okay, a year, but I won't change my mind. We shall see. He pulled her into his arms, and Elara rested her head against his chest, listening to the silence where a heartbeat should have been. The year passed quickly. Spring came, and with it a sense of renewal. Mia thrived, growing taller and brighter with each passing day. Elara continued working in the manor, but Jareth also arranged for her to take online classes, helping her finish the degree she'd abandoned years ago. It felt like reclaiming a part of herself she'd thought was lost forever. She and Jareth grew closer, navigating the strange reality of a relationship between human and vampire. There were challenges, certainly. The fact that he couldn't go out during the day. The way he had to carefully control his strength around her. The hunger she sometimes saw flash in his eyes when she was close. But there was also tenderness. He would read to her for hours in languages both living and dead. He taught her to dance in the grand ballroom, waltzing under the chandeliers while Mia watched and giggled. He was patient with her fears, gentle with her scars, and fierce in his protection of both her and Mia. And Elara fell more in love with him every day. The vampire court was another matter. Jareth had kept them away for months, but eventually they demanded an audience. Elara met them in the manor's throne room, a cavernous space she'd never entered before, and found herself facing a dozen vampires, all white-haired and red-eyed and coldly beautiful. They looked at her like she was an insect. So this is the human, one of them said, a woman with a voice like cut glass. The one who has captured our king's attention. Lady Morgana, Jareth said, his tone a warning. You will speak to her with respect. Morgana's lips curved. Of course, my lord. I merely wonder what makes her so special. She is not the first human you have taken an interest in. She is the only one who matters, Jareth said flatly, and you will accept that, or you will leave my court. Morgana's expression flickered with something that might have been fear. The other vampires shifted uneasily. As you command, my lord, Morgana said, bowing her head. The rest of the meeting was tense but uneventful. The vampires asked questions, subtle and probing, trying to assess whether Elara was a threat or an opportunity. Jareth shut down each attempt with cold efficiency, making it clear that Elara was not to be touched, manipulated, or even looked at too long. By the end, Elara was exhausted and more than a little overwhelmed. That was terrifying, she said once they were alone. You handled it well. I didn't do anything. You stood your ground. You did not flinch. That is more than most humans could manage. Elara leaned against him, grateful for his solidity. Do they hate me? They are wary of you, jealous perhaps, but they will not act against you. They know what I would do if they tried. Elara shivered, remembering the casual violence with which Jareth had grabbed Marcus. She had no doubt he would do far worse to protect her. "I don't want to cause problems for you," she said. "You are not a problem, Elara. You are the best thing that has happened to me in centuries. And I will not let anyone, vampire or otherwise, make you feel otherwise." Elara looked up at him and smiled. "I love you. And I love you. Always." The year mark arrived in November, exactly 1 year after the night Jareth had found them in the chapel. Elara woke that morning with a sense of certainty that felt like fate. She found Jareth in the library, as she had so many times before. He looked up as she entered, and she saw the question in his eyes. "Yes," she said before he could ask. "I still want this. I want you. Forever." Jareth rose slowly, crossing to her. "You are certain? There is no going back once it is done." "I know, and I'm certain. What about Mia?" "I've talked to her. She understands. She knows I'll be different, but still her mother. And she's excited, actually. She thinks it's like something out of a fairy tale." Jareth's lips curved. She would. "So will you do it?" Jareth cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle. "Yes, but not tonight. We will do this properly. There are rituals, preparations, and I want you to have time to say goodbye to your human life." "I don't need to say goodbye. I'm ready now. Nevertheless, we will wait 1 more week to ensure everything is done correctly." Elara wanted to argue, but she saw the seriousness in his expression and nodded. "Okay, 1 week." The week passed in a blur. Jareth explained the process, what would happen, what she should expect. It would hurt, he warned her. The transformation was not gentle, but he would be with her every moment, guiding her through it. Elara also took time to talk to Mia to make sure her daughter understood what was happening. Mia was surprisingly matter-of-fact about it, accepting the news with the easy adaptability of childhood. "Will you still be my mama?" she asked. "Always," Elara promised. "That will never change." "And you'll be strong like Mr. Jareth?" "Yes." "Cool," Mia grinned. "Can you teach me to be strong too?" "I'll teach you everything I can." The night finally arrived. Jareth led Elara to his private chambers, a room she'd never entered before. It was elegant and sparse, dominated by a large bed draped in black silk. "Are you ready?" he asked. Elara took a breath. "Yes." Jareth sat on the edge of the bed and pulled her down beside him. His expression was solemn, his eyes dark with an emotion she couldn't name. "This will hurt," he said, "but I will be as gentle as I can, and I will not leave you. Do you understand?" "I understand." Jareth leaned in and kissed her, soft and lingering. Then he pulled back and brushed her hair away from her neck. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too." His fangs sank into her throat. The pain was immediate and overwhelming, a white-hot fire that spread through her veins. Elara gasped, her hands clutching at Jareth's shoulders, but he held her steady, his arms like iron around her. She could feel her blood leaving her body, feel her heartbeat slowing, her vision dimming. Panic clawed at her, but Jareth's voice was there, murmuring reassurances, anchoring her. Then he pulled back and bit his own wrist, pressing it to her lips. "Drink." Elara drank. The taste was strange, metallic and cold, but as it slid down her throat, something inside her shifted. The pain receded, replaced by a burning sensation that was somehow both agonizing and exhilarating. She could feel her body changing, reshaping, becoming something other than human. Time lost meaning. She might have been there for minutes or hours or days. All she knew was Jareth's presence, solid and unwavering, and the fire consuming her from the inside out. And then, finally, it stopped. Elara opened her eyes. The world had changed. Everything was sharper, brighter, more vivid. She could hear the wind outside, could smell the earth and the trees in the distant village. She could feel Jareth's presence like a second heartbeat, constant and reassuring. She sat up slowly, her body moving with a grace and strength she'd never possessed. Jareth watched her, his expression cautious. "How do you feel?" he asked. Elara looked down at her hands. They were paler now, almost translucent in the dim light. She flexed her fingers and felt the power coiled beneath her skin. Incredible, she whispered. Jareth's face broke into a smile, genuine and relieved. Good. I am glad. Elara looked up at him, and for the first time she could truly see him, not just his beauty, but the weight of centuries in his eyes, the loneliness and pain and fierce love. Thank you, she said, for giving me this. Thank you for choosing me. They sat together in the growing dawn, and Elara felt something inside her settle. This was home. This was where she belonged. The transition wasn't easy. The first few weeks were the hardest as Elara learned to control her new strength and speed, to manage the constant hunger that gnawed at her. Jareth was patient, teaching her how to feed without killing, how to move through the human world without drawing attention. Mia adjusted faster than Elara expected. She seemed to understand instinctively that her mother was still her mother, just different, and she delighted in the new games they could play, the way Elara could now keep up with her boundless energy. The vampire court was another matter. They accepted Elara's transformation with varying degrees of grace, some welcoming her, others resentful of her sudden elevation. But Jareth made it clear that she was under his protection, and that was enough to keep the peace. Morgana, in particular, seemed torn between hostility and grudging respect. One evening, she cornered Elara in one of the manor's hallways. "You are very lucky," she said without preamble. "I know," Elara replied. "Lord Jareth has not shown this much favor to anyone in centuries. Do not take it for granted." "I don't." Morgana studied her with those cold garnet eyes. "You love him." "Yes. And he loves you. That much is obvious. But love is dangerous in our world, Elara. It makes us weak, vulnerable. Or it makes us stronger," Elara said. "It gives us something to fight for." Morgana's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Perhaps. Time will tell. She left without another word, and Elara stood there, wondering what she'd really meant. But those concerns faded as the months passed and life settled into a new rhythm. Elara thrived as a vampire, growing stronger and more confident. She and Jareth became inseparable, ruling the territory together, navigating the complex politics of the vampire court as partners. And Mia continued to grow, bright and happy and loved, surrounded by a family that looked nothing like what Elara had imagined, but was perfect nonetheless. One evening, 5 years after the night in the chapel, Elara found herself standing in the same spot where Jareth had first found them. The chapel was still ruined, still abandoned, but it looked different now through her vampire eyes. Less ominous, just sad. Jareth appeared beside her, moving with that silent grace she now shared. "Why did you come here?" "I wanted to see it again, to remember." "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Elara looked up at him, at the man who had saved her and loved her and given her a life she'd never dreamed possible. "Not for a second," she said. Jareth smiled and pulled her close, and they stood together in the ruins of the chapel where their story had begun, looking out at the future stretching endlessly before them. Years continued to pass, and Elara discovered depths to her new existence she hadn't anticipated. The vampire court became less alien as she learned its rhythms, its ancient protocols, its careful dance of power and diplomacy. Jareth taught her the history of their kind, stories reaching back millennia, and she found herself fascinated by the weight of it all. But her greatest joy remained her daughter. Mia grew into a remarkable young woman, smart and kind and utterly fearless. She navigated the strange reality of having a vampire mother and a vampire king as a stepfather with aplomb, treating it as just another interesting aspect of her life. When Mia turned 18, she announced her intention to study abroad, to see the world beyond the manor and the village. Elara's heart ached at the thought of her leaving, but she understood. Mia needed to forge her own path. "Will you be okay?" Mia asked the night before she left. They were sitting in the library, in the same chairs where Elara and Jareth had spent so many evenings. Mia had grown tall and beautiful, with her father's dark curls and her mother's determination. "I'll miss you terribly," Elara admitted. "But yes, I'll be okay. You need to live your life, baby. That's what I want for you. Will you visit?" "As often as you'll let me." Mia smiled. And if I meet someone, fall in love, you won't go all overprotective vampire on them, will you? Elara laughed. I make no promises, but I'll try to behave. What about Mr. Jareth? Him you should worry about. They both laughed, and then Mia grew serious. Thank you, Mama, for everything, for getting us out, for keeping us safe, for giving me this life. I know it wasn't easy. Elara felt tears prick her eyes, though they wouldn't fall. Vampires couldn't cry. You were worth every moment, every struggle. I love you so much. I love you too. They held each other for a long time, and Elara marveled at how her daughter had grown, how strong and independent she'd become. It was everything she'd hoped for. The next morning, Mia left for the airport, waving goodbye from the car. Elara stood on the manor steps with Jareth beside her, watching until the car disappeared from view. She will be fine, Jareth said quietly. I know, it's just hard, letting her go. That is what it means to be a parent, loving them enough to let them find their own way. Elara leaned against him, grateful for his steadiness. When did you become so wise? I have had a very long time to practice. They went back inside, and Elara felt the manor settle around them, quiet, without Mia's presence, but still home. She realized that this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where it was just her and Jareth facing eternity together. The thought should have been daunting. Instead, it filled her with peace. That evening, Jareth took her to a part of the manor she'd never seen before, a tower room at the very top of the building. Inside, the walls were covered in paintings and drawings, centuries of art collected from across the world. I have never shown this to anyone, Jareth said. This is where I come when I need to remember. Remember what? That beauty exists. That there is more to existence than power and politics and the endless march of time. Elara walked slowly around the room, studying each piece. There were portraits and landscapes, abstracts and still lifes, some in styles she recognized and others she'd never seen before. This is incredible, she breathed. I'm glad you think so. I wanted to share it with you. All of it. Every part of me. Elara turned to face him. You already have. From the moment we met, you've been nothing but honest with me. Not quite. There is one thing I have not told you. Elara's breath caught. What? Jareth crossed to her, taking her hands in his. The night I found you in the chapel, it was not an accident. I had felt something calling me, pulling me toward that place. I did not understand it at the time, but I do now. What do you mean? Vampires believe in fate, in threads that bind certain souls together across lifetimes. I felt that thread the moment I saw you. I knew, even then, that you were meant to be part of my existence. Elara stared at him, her mind reeling. You're saying we're soulmates? I am saying that in 1,000 years of existence, you are the only one who has ever felt like home. Elara's throat tightened with emotion. Jareth, I do not expect you to say the same. I simply wanted you to know the truth, that saving you that night was not kindness or honor, or even pity. It was recognition. It was fate. Elara thought about that night in the chapel, about how desperate and afraid she'd been, how close to giving up. And then Jareth had appeared like something out of a story, offering safety when she had none, kindness when she'd forgotten what it felt like. I felt it too, she said quietly. I didn't have words for it then, but I knew. Even terrified, even half frozen, I knew you were something important, someone who would change everything. Jareth's expression softened into something unbearably tender. Then we are in agreement. That we're meant to be together? Yes, absolutely. He pulled her close and kissed her, and Elara felt the truth of it in her bones. This was fate. This was home. This was forever. When they finally broke apart, Jareth led her to the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. I used to hate sunsets, he said quietly. They reminded me of everything I had lost, the ability to walk in daylight, to feel the sun on my face, to be part of the waking world. And now they remind me of you, of the day I found you and how you changed everything. Elara rested her head on his shoulder and watched the light fade. She thought about the years ahead, the decades and centuries stretching endlessly before them. About Mia growing older, living her life, maybe having children of her own. About watching the world change while she and Jareth remained constant. It should have been frightening. Instead, it felt like freedom. "What are you thinking?" Jareth asked. "That I'm happy, that I never thought I could be this happy. But here I am. Here you are. Here we are." Jareth turned and cupped her face in his hands, his red eyes bright in the fading light. "I will love you for the rest of existence, Elara Nocturne, until the stars burn out and time itself ends." Elara smiled, and for the first time in her life, she believed in forever. "And I will love you just as long, maybe longer. That is acceptable." They stood together in the tower, watching the world turn from day to night, and Elara felt the last piece of her past fall away. She was no longer the broken woman sleeping in a ruined chapel, desperate and afraid. She was strong and loved and free, with an eternity of possibilities before her. And beside her was the man who had carried them both home when they had nowhere else to go. The vampire king who had looked at a terrified human and her daughter and seen not weakness, but worth, the love of her life, her home, her forever. Mia visited often over the years, bringing stories of her travels, her studies, eventually her own love and family. Elara watched her daughter build a beautiful life, one filled with joy and purpose, and felt a pride so fierce it made her chest ache. She was there when Mia got married, standing in the sunlight, thanks to a charm Jareth had commissioned that allowed them brief periods in daylight for special occasions. She was there when Mia's first child was born, a boy named Liam with his grandmother's eyes and his mother's smile. And through it all, Jareth was beside her, steady and constant, loving her through every joy and challenge. The vampire court eventually accepted her fully, recognizing her not just as Jareth's consort but as a leader in her own right. She brought a human perspective to their ancient traditions, tempering their harsher tendencies with compassion, reminding them that they had once been human too. Some nights, when the manor was quiet and the world seemed to hold its breath, Elara would walk through the gardens with Jareth, talking about everything and nothing, planning for the future or reminiscing about the past, simply existing together, two souls bound across time. "Do you ever regret it?" Jareth asked one such evening. "Giving up your humanity?" Elara thought about it, really thought about everything she'd gained and lost, the price and the reward. "No," she said finally. "I gave up being human, but I gained being myself. I gained freedom and strength and a love I never imagined possible. I gained forever with you. How could I regret that?" Jareth smiled, that rare, genuine expression that transformed his face. "I am glad, because I cannot imagine existence without you. Good thing you don't have to." They walked on through the moonlit gardens, and Elara thought about the woman she'd been in that ruined chapel, cold and scared and alone. She wished she could go back and tell her that everything would be okay, that the pale man with red eyes walking toward her wasn't a monster but a salvation, that the nightmare would end and the fairy tale would begin. But maybe she didn't need to. Maybe that woman had known, on some level, that Jareth was different, that he was the answer to a prayer she hadn't known how to voice. Maybe fate had always been guiding them toward this moment, this life, this love. Elara looked up at Jareth, at the man who had saved her and loved her and given her eternity, and felt her heart swell with gratitude and joy. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For finding us, for carrying us home, for giving us a life worth living." Jareth stopped walking and pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "Thank you for letting me, for trusting me, for loving me, despite everything I am." "Because of everything you are," Elara corrected. "I love you because of who you are, not despite it." "Then I am the luckiest creature to ever walk this earth." "We both are." They stood there in the garden, wrapped in each other's arms, as the moon rose high above them and the stars wheeled overhead. Two souls who had found each other in the darkest moment and built a life of light and love. And in the distance, if you listened closely, you could hear the echo of a ruined chapel, empty now, but forever marked as the place where everything changed. The place where a mother and daughter, desperate and afraid, found safety in the most unlikely of saviors. The place where a vampire king, ancient and alone, found a reason to hope again. The place where fate and choice and love collided to create something eternal. Home.